Well, today's guest is Miss Anna Morgan, who is a former recruiter turned job coach. Hi, Anna. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How long were you a recruiter for, and how long have you been a career coach? And I know you're going to tell us some juicy morsels about recruitment. So let's find out a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I accidentally fell into sales and recruiting. I probably 15 years ago I worked in hospitality for many years, and then I had jumped into selling advertising, and I was fed up from knocking on doors, and I walked into a staffing company, and I sat down at the table and I was like, I just want to do anything except sell advertising. And at that moment, I was recruited into the staffing firm. And it was there that I learned the basics of selling and recruiting and started the foundation of working with job seekers, learning, where they were struggling, what was working, what was not. And even back then, I was probably started in recruiting when we were still faxing resumes before we were actually even emailing resumes. But from that point, my recruiting career took off, and I worked for a couple different agency recruiting firms, which is, that headhunter mentality where corporations would pay the staffing firm to find them top talent. I started my career in a generalist capacity, working with call center, customer service, administrative, HR, and then niched down to accounting and finance positions from AP clerks up to CFO level candidates. And during that time, it was a balance between, sourcing and recruiting top talent, and also sales and building relationships. And, it's brought me to this point today where I really see that job seeking is social selling. There are so many similarities between how we build our personal brand, how we show up in the world, that impacts and attracts the right type of career opportunities. So after working in agency recruiting for 10 plus years, I went over to the corporate side, where I gained valuable knowledge how to help job seekers stand out to internal recruiters. So I'd taken that knowledge, and I decided after being in corporate America for 1 year that I wanted to have a side hustle, and I started this Instagram account, which is Anna Morgan Career BFF, and I started sharing experiences that I was seeing day to day in the recruiting cycle. And then I was laid off from my corporate position back in May of 2020 during COVID, like so many other people in the world right now. And so I pivoted full time to continue serving job seekers and career changers with best strategies to serve them in their job search approach. We are no longer in the space where we can just spray our resume everywhere and hope that we're going to get a response.
Pray and pray.
Yeah, it's that whole mentality. If we just, throw all this stuff up against the wall, we hope something that is going to stick. And what I have seen throughout my career is more specific is always going to be more profitable or more impactful. So if candidates can get really focused and find clarity around really what brings them joy, what makes their heart sing, what will get them out of bed in the morning, and then kind of reverse engineer their strategy towards those things that really matter, then they're most likely going to attract more of the right types of opportunities. And those are some of the little strategies that I help job seekers with today.
So it's interesting you talked about reverse engineering your passion, essentially. That for a lot of people really entails a career transition. So I guess talk to us about doing a career transition during a recession when the job market is so tough. What do you do to stand out? What are some of your tips and techniques to get noticed and get through the initial wall?
So that's a couple questions right there as far as how do you think about a career transition? So, I always suggest that people have some kind of side hustle because it just It helps in case something like COVID happens where companies are cutting back, whether that means do personal training or teach yoga or mow lawns or, do a little MLM, something like that, where you have just a little extra to, pad your budget, because when you're a job seeker, like every penny matters. So when you're thinking about career changing, it's a longer term game. And again, tying back in that social selling aspect, it is building our personal brand. It is telling our story and not being afraid to talk about your journey and your experience on social media. That was how I built Career BFF, because I would post topics that I was seeing about candidates. Like, one of my most popular posts was, when you save your resume electronically, you want to save it as your name. So annamorgan.resume. So as a recruiter, I would see all these files come in that would say thebombresume.com or I hate job searching, or, it would be like the resume just for this company, like resume 2017, and they were applying for a job in 2020. So it's all those little things that matter, how our brains absorb that information. And so I started talking about these topics. And so I became top of mind for all my friends, family, network, anytime that they had a job search question. And so the same principle applies whether you're a data science professional, an engineer, an architect, a marketing professional. If you can start showing up and telling little micro stories about your career and who you serve and who you help, you are going to be top of mind when someone comes into that person's sphere of influence and says, I'm looking for a data scientist, or I'm looking for an engineer, or I'm looking for a marketing person. So I really encourage my clients not to be afraid to show up in social media in that capacity, to show their expertise, to show their leadership voice. So you can do that on your Instagram, on your Facebook, and most importantly on LinkedIn, which is where I have a massive love affair with LinkedIn right now. And I have a wonderful mentor named Judy Fox, who really helped teach me these principles of how to build social currency and build that brand on LinkedIn. So the first thing job seekers can do if they're thinking about a career transition is to show up on the platform. And that looks like commenting and building original content. So I see a lot of like late Xer, early boomer traditionalists who are very resistant to this principle. And I've had a lot of success helping these types of candidates kind of get out of their comfort zone. And once they start commenting and they start seeing the right kinds of people come in their news feed in their life, and they're taking these conversations offline and getting introductions and getting informational interviews, the light bulb moments start happening. So that's the fastest way, is commenting and engaging on LinkedIn to start building social credibility and trust on LinkedIn. And once you do that, you are going to start attracting the right hiring authorities, and you are earning the right, as Judy says, to ask for an informational interview, to ask for an interview. So yeah, showing up in that capacity is going to be very helpful. What was the last part of the question that you had said? You mentioned, how you can position yourself if you're looking to make a career change. So I think I answered that. What was the next part?
Oh, I actually have some questions about building that credibility. I know there's a lot of conversations on LinkedIn about posting things that are not necessarily job related. And that falls into a couple of categories, at least on my feed, because I'm an animal lover. So I feel whatever you might talk about at the water cooler at work would be appropriate for LinkedIn. So cute animal photos, I'm all about it. When it comes to politics, I feel that could brand you in a negative light. And a lot of times I do have political motivations, right? I'm opinionated. And a lot of times I put a lot of time into making really proper comments, but then sometimes I wonder if that's a smart move for LinkedIn. So I would like to see what your opinion is about those two topics.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of engagement and etiquette guidelines for LinkedIn. You know, obviously, if you want to be seen on the platform, you want your settings to be public. And with your settings being public, excuse me, you're opening yourself up to second, third degree connections, seeing your comments, future employers, past employers, references, those types of things. So definitely be cognizant of the things that you write, because so many people are watching that don't comment and engage. There are so many lurkers on the platform. When I started being active on LinkedIn and really showing up in this authority voice, so many people used to walk by my cube and be like, I love what you're doing on LinkedIn. And I would be like, where are you on LinkedIn? Like, I know I work with you, but I never see you on LinkedIn. So that's just a classic example of, you know, just being conscientious of what you're putting out there. So you want to personalize, you know, connection requests if it makes sense. I connect with people that I just feel intuitively aligned with, that I think have a vibration and an energy that matches mine. I'm very careful about tagging people in my comments, that they are people that I've built relationships with in the comments, or that I've taken the relationship offline and I can speak to their character integrity. Mm-hmm. I've had a situation recently where people will come into my DMs and say, oh, I endorsed you for 25 skills. Will you endorse me? You know, I want to get 90 endorsements. And so I left the person a voice note and I said, you know, thank you so much for that, but I only endorse people that I've worked with in some capacity. So that's like a little thing too, where I think people get caught up in this, I want 10,000 connections or I want this many endorsements. It's not the quality, it's the quantity, or I'm sorry, other way around. It's not the quantity, it's the quality of, you know, the endorsements, the recommendations, and the comments. So as far as additional like etiquette, LinkedIn likes celebratory posts, shouting out other people, highlighting what you love about your connections. The best types of comments are making sure that we're actually answering the question in the post, using that reflective listening, and most of, you know, staying positive. I agree about the political state, you know, conversations can be tricky. I do think LinkedIn has been a powerful place to call out, you know, diversity, inclusion, pay equity, racism in the workplace. This has been a powerful place to see these tough conversations, have these tough conversations, and, you know, make corporations more aware that we are watching, we are listening, and, you know, people on LinkedIn are going to call out bad behavior, and we're going to start, you know, sharing these experiences. So I think LinkedIn is good for that type of thing, but we do have to be conscious of what we put out there, because our reputations are everything. And you can use LinkedIn for so much good. Like, I just show up completely authentically, just Anna Morgan, and I keep attracting like the right kind of people in my sphere of influence. I've not reached that point where it's gotten weird yet. So that's good.
I think a lot of people that might be tuning in are in the emerging psychedelic and cannabis markets, and that's a market that attracts a lot of activism. And one thing, you know, and anyone that goes into this industry, into these emerging fields, is extremely passionate about plant medicine, and activism is really at the core of, you know, what attracts people into those two industries. But one thing that a headhunter that I'm working with told me yesterday is that, you know, I was going to publish an article, and he said your article is correct and it's controversial. However, you have to realize that controversy, you will be known, but you will be recognized as a controversial figure. And is that how you want to brand yourself? And I think that was a very wise thing to say, because he said, you're absolutely correct in your assessment. But do you want to be known as this, you know, do-gooder activist, or do you want to be known as a business professional that maybe closes business? And that's a different method of branding. So I thought that was really wise because I think a lot of us in these two emerging industries especially are super passionate. And, you know, obviously with everything that's going on with BLM and a lot of, I think, gender and racial issues in the workplace, I think there's a lot of people that want to voice their passionate opinions. But I think it's just interesting to always remind yourself that that is how you're branding yourself, and always ask again whether or not you want to brand yourself in this manner and whether or not that will be effective in your end goal. And I thought
and I think it also, like, to put out kind of a polarizing article like that, like, you need to kind of do the legwork to make sure you have a warm audience, and that the people in your network are the people that are engaging with maybe your micro content around your industry and your passion and your activism. And then you can come out with kind of this bigger type of announcement or polarizing conversation. But it's, again, going back to like building that trust and credibility that we know that you are going to educate us, inform us, and inspire us around your industry and what the cannabis industry does for people from a mental health standpoint, a serenity standpoint. And it's for that industry, it's breaking the stigma, right, of how we have associated, you know, THC and plant medicine back in the past to what it's doing for people today. So, and that's going to be a slow evolution, but, you know, it is important to show up and have those conversations because people need to know. I mean, it's a wonderful alternative to synthetic medicine that mainstream medical organizations want to shove down our throat every time we have a symptom, you know. So that is important work that you and your organization are doing.
And I think it's wonderful to be also a pioneer. I think it's just pioneers sometimes pay a steeper price for the movements that they make. I think I was listening to Simon Sinek one time, and he says leaders are people who go first. So it takes extra courage to go first.
It does. And that's like, you made a good point, and this goes back to LinkedIn and commenting. When you see a post where there's no comment, it's kind of like the first comment is the first person on the dance floor. Sometimes it's like uncomfortable, but it's actually the best way to be seen. So if you see a post by like a Simon or a Gary V or a Bridget Hyacinth or a Shanae Moret, and you have a chance to comment within that first couple minutes or hour, that is another little hack to get good visibility on the platform. And if you make a high quality comment, you will be seen in that thread and people will start connecting with you because they loved seeing what you had to say.
Awesome. Wonderful. And this was a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's very appropriate given the climate nowadays on LinkedIn. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So it sounds like LinkedIn might be one of the first strategies that someone will employ in order to start making that career transition. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that is usually one of the first things that I assist my clients with. And, you know, it's about making your profile easy for people to connect with you. So some of the key components in optimizing your profile look like, you know, making sure that you have a professional headshot, you know, a nice picture that's zoomed in where we can see kind of the light behind your eyes and a good smile. It is said that viewers of profiles spend about 17% of their time on the photo, which is a lot of time when we're browsing through. Yeah. So, you know, as they say, they're judging a book by its cover. And I mean, that's just the world we live in right now. But it is important. But we have such great technology with phones, cameras and stuff now that people can take a good headshot without having to spend a lot of money. But there is value in hiring a good headshot photographer as well. There is at the top of your profile, your cover image, which a lot of people just have the constellations. And that is super valuable real estate where people can stand out, put their name, put their strengths, their core competencies, the industries they work in. If they have a personal hashtag, they can tell people to follow that hashtag, and then have a call to action, which tells people to follow you, connect with you, interview you, hire you, whatever you're feeling inspired to put in that cover image. And you can create them in Canva, you can create them in PowerPoint. It's just a way for job seekers especially to kind of express themselves, because I can say as a recruiter, when I'm looking at 200 profiles that have applied for a resume, it's the little things that stand out that my brain, and I can speak for, I've worked with enough recruiters to confidently say, it's not necessarily the industry, the years of experience, and all the accomplishments. Sometimes it's those little things that make you memorable. And that could be your cover image. That could be how you position your headline. Your headline is also important because LinkedIn is a search engine just like Google. So when I'm a recruiter, again, I'm going to go type in the keywords of the position that I'm looking to fill before I'm going to be searching for open to opportunities or, people put wild things in their headline. I recommend that you keep it front loaded with the keywords search of the position you want or that you have, and then do like a mini sales pitch or kind of bragging rights at the end. Again, kind of in that storytelling element. The other thing is your about section. A lot of people just put, 2 or 3 sentences saying, I'm a great sales account manager, without using all that real estate where they can have a really good attention grabbing hook to get people to click into that see more button. And then they can highlight their skills and experience, their accomplishments. What people say about them is really powerful in the about section. I think we talked about that on our original call. And then they can attach different things to their featured section. So that's a place where you would add your resume. If you're a creative, you could add links to your portfolio website. You could add images of speaking engagements that you have spoken at. You can really beef up your profile. You can list accomplishments. You want to make sure you optimize all the skills available in there. Those are a few things that are best practices with your profile to make it easy for people to understand who you are, who you serve, and how you help.
Amazing. Now, what would be a good hook for the about section?
It depends. Mine is, I accidentally fell in a corporate water fountain and also fell into sales and recruiting. And so people ask me about my fall in the corporate water fountain all the time. And it's a fun, story that makes me memorable. I happened to have torn my ACL at the same time and stood up in front of all my clients. And I was like making a splash in the new year. So I'm like standing 3 feet in this pool of water in the lobby of an office building. But that's me. I'm clumsy. I'm silly. Like I always have, something to say. And it's true. I fell into sales and recruiting as well. And so I use that as my lead in. I have another friend, Cheryl, who talks about how she was in a coma for a period of time. One of my clients says, when I am, what did she say? When I'm not, like pivoting tables in Excel, once an accountant, always accountant, she's harmonizing ingredients for recipes. And then she kind of ties in her love for cooking with how she bridges the gap between business and technology. So I did another one for a commercial real estate professional, and he's a big fan of Top Chef. So we drew this analogy between how he's the top chef of commercial real estate management, and we included like his skill set as the ingredients, and we just had a lot of fun with it. And it really shows like his vibe and his personality that, again, is going to make him stand out against other commercial real estate professionals.
Right.
So have fun with it. Use white space, like spread it out, because LinkedIn does not like long paragraph form communication. And I think it's also because we're in this world of like Twitter characters, we're consuming so much content that it's easier on our brain if things are spread out and you use bullet points or emojis to highlight what's really important.
So basically personalize it. As much as you're professional, you want to personalize it as well.
Again, yeah, because I really feel like if I look back and I have a crazy memory, and it's the things about my candidates like that stood out and that I will never forget. And I mean, I've been on LinkedIn now for so long that I'm having candidates from 12 years ago reach back out to me and say, I love what you're doing. You've always been a career BFF, and, you know, helping them now along their journey later in life, which is really amazing.
That's so great to hear.
Yeah.
Now, obviously you've had a long-standing career as a recruiter. And I know some of the things that I hear from a lot of job seekers is that they have challenges getting through HR. What are some tricks you can share with us to get past that gate?
Okay. So that goes back into being more specific is always going to be more profitable. So you want to have a clear target list of your big whale of companies. So I'll talk about corporate recruiters first. So what a lot of people don't know is that most corporations, their HR teams and recruiting and talent acquisition run really lean, way more lean than I actually realized. But it actually makes sense why they need to partner with agency recruiters, because it's complete chaos. So the thing is, you know, in my organization, we had 2 recruiters for over 600 corporate employees and over 6,000 employees in the field. So myself and this other recruiter, we handled all corporate roles, and we, on average, each had 30 plus positions we were working. So what that involves is the recruiter has to meet with the hiring manager, understand their perception of quality, what their hot buttons are, you know, what makes a resume go in a yes pile or a no pile, right? So we take all that data back, organize it, post the positions, start talking to candidates we've already, you know, interviewed, see if they're a good fit for the position, write up their experience, send it to the hiring manager, start the interview process 30 plus times at once, right? Mm-hmm. So how does a job seeker stand out to a recruiter that has that kind of workload? It takes some persistence. So the first thing is you need to have a resume that's optimized to get through an applicant tracking solution. There are, you know, Microsoft is integrated with LinkedIn right now, so you can use one of their templates and get suggestions on some of the best practices and ideas for language for your bullet points, which is always helpful. I also recommend that you keep your resume super simple. I mean, a Word document or a PDF, because I can say, looking at the resumes on the other side of the ATS, if they're all crazy graphics, if they're just too many text boxes, you know, it doesn't translate right in the applicant tracking solution. So I also will say a lot of people have this mindset that it's, oh, the applicant tracking solution that's booting me out of the system. My experience with corporate is that it's still humans that are declining people. So I would go through 200 resumes and I would select move forward or decline based on, you know, looking at the resume and what I knew that the hiring manager needed. Now, when I worked on the agency side, their applicant tracking solutions were a little bit more robust, and they might build in more of those qualifying questions. But I still think more than not, it's humans that are declining candidates out of the ATS. But keep your resume simple, you know, bullet points again for what's important. Again, don't be afraid to talk about your volunteer experience, anything that you do outside of work. Again, like that about section in your profile, it makes you kind of stand out, you know, especially for recent grads and students. Include, you know, as much as your internship work, your volunteer work, your extracurricular activities, just to beef up conversation points, because really it's about connection over qualification at this point. I mean, there's always going to be positions that have hard qualifications, right? But if candidates can do a good job of having an optimized resume that's easy to read, just like the profile being easy to consume, and we understand the career journey, you're most likely going to get a next step from the recruiter. The biggest thing I saw when I worked as a corporate recruiter would candidates would be lazy, right? They would see that I was a recruiter at ABC company, and they would just send me a resume and be like, hey, please keep me in mind for any positions at your company. Well, that makes the recruiter do all the work while their phone is ringing. They're getting 200 emails, working 30 positions, and people are walking up to the desk saying, why don't you have any candidates for me, right? So it makes the recruiter do all the work. And that's the same thing for both agency and recruiters, that you as a job seeker want to, if you're going to send a direct message, it needs to be a quality direct message. It needs to say who you are, why you're interested in the company, what position you're specifically interested in, and help me understand with maybe 3 bullet points why you're a good fit for this position. And then politely ask for my time. Even better, if you have commented on any of my content or referenced anything from my profile saying, hey, Miss Morgan, I'm a lacrosse player too. I see that you coach lacrosse. Those types of comments build rapport and make candidates stand out. And it shows the recruiter that they do the work to stand out. It shows that they're prepared, they're organized, and conscientious of my time as well, because that's an important component too. And it would be those job seekers that I would be more willing to say, here's my calendar, let's talk. Even if I didn't have a position that maybe I looked at their resume and they weren't a great fit, but it's being prepared, being organized, and, polished and professional, and asking for the right to have my time. And then it would be helpful if I'd seen them in the comments, if they had sent a direct message, maybe they left me a voicemail and followed up with a direct email as well. So that ties back into that social selling concept. If I saw, Jane Smith's name on my comment, then I saw her direct message, then she left me a message, and then I saw her apply to the position, I'd be like, oh, Jane Smith, I'm going to give Jane Smith some time. So that's with corporate recruiters. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, so it sounds like just putting consistent attention is fine. They don't get bothered by it, because I think a lot of people are wondering, like, well, if I contact them through this method and that method, they might just think I'm stalking them. So I better not.
Don't give up. So like, I'm coaching this MBA student right now, and she was targeting a position with Nestle in Ohio, which is a very high desired company for her. And she had applied for a position. She had commented on like 1 or 2 of the hiring person's content, and she had sent a direct message. And so I said, so where are we with Nestle? And she's like, well, I've tried 3 times. I think I'm just going to move on.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you want to work for Nestle or not? And so what she did was I said, you need to pick up the phone and call and introduce yourself. Well, sure enough, the lady picked up the phone and she has an informational interview. So don't give up. I mean, you have to pleasantly persistent, and also positive energy. Like, don't send the emails like, you must have not seen my resume. I sent it 5 times, like, you're a total B for not getting back to me. Like, that kind of energy is not going to translate well. And I'm going to be like, bye. So yeah, just be pleasantly persistent and be other focused, like when I was still in my corporate role, like, people were following up, just saying, how are you doing during this time? I hope your family's safe. Again, trying to build that rapport, because you never know where that person's going to go. So like, now I've had lots of candidates that I've worked with in my corporate role that are clients now, or that I'm helping introduce to other opportunities. So again, tying back into that relationship and our reputation is just really important. And now with all these social channels, you just have to be conscientious of how you follow up and what you say, because you never want to burn bridges, right?
Mm.
So then on the agency side, the biggest tip I can offer for that is
one quick question. The audience may not know what the agency side means. So can you explain to us what that means?
Yeah. So an agency side is like a Robert Half or a K-Force or a Roth Staffing, like a big agency recruiting firm that candidates go to get temporary, temp to hire, and direct hire opportunities. They have staffing firms for every type of industry, medical to sales to engineering, everything. So I always recommend that candidates align themselves with, one or two agencies where they have one account manager that they really build like a great relationship with. And how you build a great relationship with an agency recruiter is give them the time to interview with them, because agency recruiters a lot of times have a quota of people they have to interview. But use that time to build the relationship. Again, be other focused, ask questions about the recruiter, make it a two-way conversation so you can get to know them too and have, rapport building information about them to follow up with. So again, you kind of stand out. But the biggest thing that helped me when I was an agency recruiter that really made me like champion candidates and get excited to make sales calls on their behalf was, one, getting to really know them as a person and a professional, because I would lean into those personal elements too, because I would know my clients really well. But it was when they would send me an email and say, hey, I'm interested in this position, kind of same concept. Here are some like bullet points of what makes me an exceptional sales account manager. Because then I would take those points, on my notebook, and then I'd pick up the phone and call my top 10 clients and say, hey, I want to tell you about Jane Smith, this amazing sales and account manager. And then I'd have those little bullet points in front of me without me having to necessarily create the marketing plan for them. That's the way job seekers can really work effectively with agency recruiters, is giving them some of that information in bite-sized bullet points to give them talking points to hopefully get them an interview. Sounds super basic, but so many people don't do it. And they just send the resume and cover letter and say, please help me find a job.
Now, if I understand the agency recruitment side correctly, they'll work with a few companies and another agency recruiter might work with completely different companies. So it behooves you to have a few on your corner. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, more is not necessarily better. And when you're working with an agency, some great questions to ask them is, how do you get your clients? What does their interview process look like? And you as the candidate need to say to the agency recruiter, you need to call me first before you submit my resume to any positions. Mm-hmm. And here's why. If you are working with multiple agencies, they may just send your resume without calling and giving you a heads up. So what happens for the candidate is, say their target was like Spanx or something, right? And so Jane Smith applies to a sales account manager at Spanx, and then the recruiter sees the job posted at Spanx, calls up Sarah Blakely and says, hey, I've got a great candidate for you. I want to send her over. So the agency sends the resume, but her resume is actually already with the company. That creates conflict and makes the candidate look a little unorganized, because the recruiter and the candidate should be aligned on where the resume is going. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So really over communicating with your recruiter, saying, you need to call me first before you submit my resume, just so they're not duplicating efforts, right? Another way you can work well with a recruiter is tell them, maybe you have 3 or 4 big whale of a target, right? That maybe you have just hit all the different roadblocks, right? And you could say, hey, do you have any relationships with these companies? And then that recruiter has some purpose. Then they can farm and go down the rabbit hole and try to cold call some of the decision makers in that company on your behalf. And that's kind of a win-win as well. But you don't want to do it simultaneously, because then it just is awkward. Because then the agency is like, well, I should get paid for the candidate. And the organization's like, well, they applied for the position first. So that can get a little tricky. So just make sure that you have a good recruiter or two that you work with that are strong communicators, letting you know where they're marketing your experience. A lot of recruiters could market you anonymously, right? Just talking about the industry you came from, your skill sets, your accomplishments. And then, once the company expresses interest, they could call the candidate and say, hey, do I have your permission to send your resume here?
And I think it's important for the candidates to vet the experience the recruiter has in a specific industry that they come from, right? So for example, in cannabis, their recruiting parameters for cultivators is completely different than sales leaders, right? So you want to speak to a recruiter that can sell you and speak to your industry, which I found out that sometimes it can be tough. Sometimes they don't share your experiences and they don't really understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and that's the downside working with more recruiting firms that are kind of like, I can do everything, and that goes back to my philosophy is like more specific is going to be more profitable, like because I had 2 years working in big box retailer, like I love working with, retail clients from entry level to C-suite because I get it. Like I've worked all those positions. I understand the lingo. So there's a lot of value in that. So trying to find a recruiting firm that works in your niche or within your area of expertise, so they can speak the language. It took me some time as someone who's not an accountant to be able to sit confidently in front of a CFO and build that credibility that I understood that he felt that I understood what he was talking about. And that takes time. And that was interviewing hundreds of candidates over the years.
So you are a person that's doing a career transition in this market. How long do you think candidates should give for that process? It doesn't sound like it will be a quick process at all, but I'm just kind of curious, what have you seen and what are your recommendations? Because I think people will run out of steam at some point.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is, feeling like we're on this roller coaster of emotions. So, one, I would encourage people to look at LinkedIn not as a job search platform, as a way to walk into a giant open networking meeting, a way to learn from amazing human beings and show up visibly on the platform, but also understand that it takes some time. I've been showing up consistently on the platform since November, producing content and being active in the comments. And I'm finally to this point where, I have but it was career insurance. So when I posted that I was laid off in May and, I thought that I would be returning to my office, and I kind of highlighted what I was grateful for, which LinkedIn likes that celebratory energy. And then I just updated my network as to what I was doing. So that's another good strategy for job seekers when they are in a transition to kind of come out and say, this is what's going on and this is what I'm doing now. And I, in 2 weeks, had so much incoming opportunity. I had 2 permanent offers, 2 speaking engagements, and 2 referral agreements signed, and another guest coaching spot. And that was all incoming. So I encourage anyone, whether they're looking for a job or not, to use LinkedIn in that capacity because it is career insurance. So showing up consistently there. And then during this time, looking to make a career pivot, I encourage job seekers to be flexible, to really lean into the relationships that they have. I mean, when's the last time you just went through your phone contacts and sent just a quick text to people saying, hey, I'm just checking in with you during COVID. Here's what's going on with me. If you hear of anything, I mean, that again, that's kind of the whole principle about the post I did yesterday about the green circle on LinkedIn. Like there's a lot of controversy about whether it helps job seekers or not. And I wanted to flip the script and make it a awareness post for people who are employed to see the green circle and the open to work signal as, hey, you need to put your servant leader hat on and think about what you can do to pay it forward, right? So having that servant leadership mindset, saying, who have I helped today? Have I gone out, out of my way to pay it forward to someone else? And so, that's a key strategy that non-job seekers can do to help, career changers and job seekers today. What else?
That's really beautiful. A CEO I once worked with, right when COVID happened, he reached out to his entire LinkedIn network, and that's thousands of people. And he put it out there. If I can make a call on your behalf, if I work with you and I can write you a letter of recommendation, please reach out to me. And I thought it was so moving and beautiful that he extended himself in such a way, because clearly he was fine. He's done extremely well. But the fact that he really was so inspirational that he was willing to, give so much time.
Back. Yeah. And people remember that. And that, again, is going to attract the right kind of people in your network. So if you pose or put together a post around kind of your situation, again, keep it positive. And, I always say, like, rejection or these types of things are just redirection. I knew after 1 year of being in corporate America, I was like, holy cow, like, this is way too much for this mama. Like, I did not love all the mechanics and the drama and all the things that come with some of the roles at corporate America. And that's why I started Career BFF. And I ended up dealing with a hostile kind of work environment and a disagreeable boss where I just could not build a relationship with her. And, I received an unfavorable performance review at the beginning of the pandemic, and I didn't advocate for myself. So, I'll say to job seekers, if you're in a position where you're dealing with unhealthy management or unhealthy work-life balance, like, ask for help. Like, go to people in your organization that you trust. I should have gone to my CHRO and asked for help in this relationship. But, I think everything happens for a reason. And that manager taught me a lot about myself and how I deal with difficult leadership and really what I want out of my life. And so when I had this life event that I was able to alchemize everything and say, in my heart, like, what is going to be the best thing for me and my family? And I was able to pivot into Career BFF. So I invite job seekers to, feel all of the feelings. You're going to feel denial and anger and frustration and grief and anger again. And then maybe you'll get to acceptance, but that is part of the journey. And there's 30 million of us going through that roller coaster. I just got goosebumps talking about that. And I feel that. I feel and being in that seat, I know that we all just have those ups and downs. And that's why I think self-care and, meditation and movement and exercise and your industry with plant medicine can really help people through this transitional time that is just this new way of living that we're dealing with. We have all been through so much in the last 4 months.
Anna, you have shared so many pearls of wisdom. Thank you for spending time with us.
Absolutely.
I definitely need to do a repeat of this conversation at a later point. I'm wondering, is there any other last minute tips that you have for the audience or anything you'd like to close with?
Progress over perfection. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Honor where you are in this process and reach out for help. There are so many people like myself, other coaches, other job search strategists. There's so much good content on LinkedIn that will inspire, motivate, and give best practices. But if someone's feeling really alone, look for a coach like myself, look for a mentor, or even accountability partner. I mean, my clients have said to me, that are director level, like, I never would have done this type of stuff on my own. And it's so powerful to have someone guiding you along this journey, because being a job seeker can feel so isolating and alone. So just reach out for help and ask questions, keep commenting and engaging on the platform. And I know that if you implement some of the best practices we talked about today, that job seekers will find the right types of hiring managers and right types of companies to work with.
Fantastic. Anna, thank you for your time.
Thank you. This was so fun. I know I talked a ton, but I feel so passionate about all these things and wanted to get, this experience, strength, and hope out to the world. So thank you.
Amazing. Now, if people wanted to connect with you, reach out to you, become a career BFF? Is there a way to?
Yeah, everyone needs a career BFF. So my Instagram is just Anna Morgan Career BFF, and LinkedIn is Anna Morgan. You can follow hashtag Career BFF to stay in tune with all the topics of job searching in 2020.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.